Right, hey guys, Jack here from Peach Guitars. Today it's my absolute pleasure to get to walk you through 3 of my favourite current production amplifiers in the world. But before I get to this, I just want to remind you to please like this video if you enjoy it, comment down below with your thoughts, and make sure that you're subscribed to the Peach Guitars YouTube channel. Okay, so as I teased there in the opening line, I actually think these are 3 of my very favourite amplifiers currently in production today, and they're all from our friends at Fender Amplification. So these amps are comprising of the 68 custom line, which came out a few years ago for Fender. What this basically is a slight revision to their 65 vintage reissue lineup, which for all intents and purposes the 65 is the kind of to a T reproduction of a mid-60s blackface style Fender amplifier. They haven't really tweaked anything in those amps, and if you want to get as an authentic a sound as possible to an original 60s Fender amp, the 65 is the way to go. The 68 custom lineup that I'm showing you today was introduced as a way to kind of appreciate some of the historic modifications that players usually made to those amplifiers to make them a little bit more usable and versatile. So Fender have actually acknowledged that that part of their history is true and that players did want some slight modifications to the tone that these amplifiers would make. They also used this amplifier to bring back the famous late 60s Silverface appearance, and they've also used it to introduce a brand new model to the vintage reissue lineup in the form of the Vibrolux as well. So it's quite a big step forward for Fender when they introduced the 68 lineup. And the tonal tweaks that they made as well, that I'm going to talk you through now, really, I think, make these amps just that little bit more usable to a wider section of players as well. So I've got 3 amps from the lineup today. It's worth just pointing out that they do also make the 68 twin reverb, which is an absolute monster amp. It's a 2x12, very big, very heavy, very loud amplifier. We don't have that in stock right now, so I'm just going to walk you through 3 of my favourite amps instead. Just for the rest of the context of what I'm using today, I'm playing a Fender American Original 60s Telecaster, and I've got a Way Huge Saucy Box overdrive that I use kind of sporadically. I only use it if I really think the amp needs it, but I wanted to show you how each of these amps respond to an overdrive pedal, as well as the different gain ranges you've got in the amp itself. So you're going to hear some clean tones with the volume around 4, and then you're also going to hear some tones where I crank the amp up almost full and just use the guitar volume. And you'll hear, as I say, just how dynamic these things can be and how usable they are, no matter how you want to set your rig up, whether you want to use it clean with pedals or just do it all by plugging straight into the amp. These amps will facilitate you absolutely to the max. This is kind of the blueprint for a dynamic amplifier circuit. And they're really portable and they're really practical. So the 68 custom lineup, I think, is a winner for Fender. So starting out with the baby amp of the range, the Princeton Reverb, and this is probably, I think, the most popular model in this lineup. Most players are looking for a Princeton either to use at home, but they're also famously brilliant for recording situations, and if you're prepared to stick a mic in front of it or even run it through an external cabinet, you can absolutely gig with a Princeton. So a couple of crucial ways in which the 68 custom differs from the 65. You've got a slightly different tone stack in the 68 custom lineup amplifiers. They've actually incorporated more of a bassman style tone stack, so it's a little bit more mid-focused, and coupled with the fact that you have less negative feedback in the 68 amplifier as well, it basically means that your tone is a little bit more focused, and it will start to give you that Fender natural tube breakup sound at a slightly earlier point than the 65 reissue would. So you can actually drive this amplifier and get it overdriving a little bit sooner than you could with a 65. That's also courtesy of the improved speaker in this amplifier. They moved to a Celestion 1030 speaker, which is a 10-inch version of a Celestion speaker. So it gives a little bit more of that mid-range overdriven tone as well if you want it. However, it's still got the balance of being able to produce those chimey clean tones that Princeton is very much known for. So all the rest of the features are true and true Princeton. It's 12 watts of power, which is actually a slight reduction on the 15 watts you get in the 65 reissue, but again, that just goes towards making this a little bit more manageable if you want those driven tones from it. You've also got the same spring reverb and tube driven vibrato, or tremolo as they call it in the amplifier. So really just a simple Princeton package. If you're looking for a grab and go, then the Princeton is kind of the ultimate way to do it. I also think that if you plug any electric guitar into a clean Princeton, that's pretty much the definitive sound of that instrument. So it's great fun to play any guitar through it. Another great thing to do is just to crank this up really loud and get all the dynamics from your guitar volume. So as I say, this Princeton gives you 12 watts of power, and that's from a pair of 6v6 output tubes. So kind of a bit of a sweeter tone than a 6L6 might give you. It tends to break up a little bit quicker as well. That's why it's suited to these smaller amplifiers. Okay, so moving along now to what is largely considered to be the Princeton's bigger brother, and is also considered probably to be Fender's most popular amp of all time. The Deluxe Reverb in the 68 lineup, again, just has a couple of significant changes to the circuitry that allow it to be a little bit more usable. For starters, you've actually got two independent channels, which on a 65 or a regular original Deluxe Reverb would have just given you largely the same kind of tone, but one channel was dry and the other had the reverb and tremolo effects. With the 68, you actually get those effects on both channels, one channel being a vintage channel, which has that classic 60s voice, but you also get the custom voice channel now on this amplifier. So that introduces a couple of the changes I talked about before with the Princeton. You get the Bassman style tone stack, which pushes the mids forward a little bit and starts to overdrive in a little bit more of a punchy way. You also get the Celestion speaker upgrade as well. So this has got Celestion V-type 12-inch speaker, so again a little bit more of that Brit voiced sound if that's what you like, but they've struck the balance just right as well. You can still get those chimey American sounds too. Okay, so similar deal to the Princeton as well. You get the reduced negative feedback in this amplifier, which makes it overdrive a little sooner if you want that to happen. You've still got ample headroom though, courtesy of 22 watts in the Deluxe. Again, that comes via two 6v6 power tubes in the output section, so a really nice solid package. A lot of players go to Deluxes as their kind of be-all end-all amplifier. If you want to use it with pedals, you can do that. If you want to just use it for its really lush clean tone, you could do that as well. But it's the sweet spot in the power rating, I think, where you can still overdrive it if you want to, and it's not at a completely hectic volume level. You can still get a really nice dynamic range of tones and gain levels just by using the controls on the amp. Okay, so last of all I want to move on to the Vibrolux, which, as I said in the introduction, was actually a new introduction to the vintage reissue lineup courtesy of this 68 line. So it's great to see it back. It was a much revered amplifier of the same era as the Deluxe and the Princetons, but it never really got talked about in the same kind of breadth when you talked about the players that used it, but it was still a really functional amplifier, slightly more powerful, so it had a little bit more headroom to offer if that's the kind of thing you're looking for, if you want to use pedals, for example. I think the Vibrolux is actually probably the best platform of the three, in my opinion, to use with pedals, because you've got a higher power rating, you've got 35 watts of power, and it comes courtesy of two 6L6 power tubes as well. So it's a little bit of a halfway house between the 6V6s and 22 watts of a Deluxe, and then getting on for like 80 watts 6L6 loaded twin reverb. So that's kind of a nice sweet spot in between. If you want the headroom of a twin, but the breakup and portability of a Deluxe, the Vibrolux almost sits right in the middle of the two, so a really useful amplifier. A couple of other changes is the fact that this amplifier has a bright switch on each channel. So it's still the same custom and vintage voices between the two, similar to the Deluxe, so you can get a classic mid-60s scooped mid-range blackface tone out of the vintage channel, but then you've got that enhanced mid-range Bassman tone stack on the custom channel. Both of them have bright switches. Both of them have access to the reverb and tremolo as well. So very functional amplifier. It's also worth pointing out that with this amplifier and the Deluxe and the Princeton, the reverb and tremolo are both foot switchable as well, but you cannot switch between the two channels. So it's not a channel switching amp in the modern sense of the term. You've got two channels, but you can use them independently just for different voicings. So they're not switchable, though you could do that with an external AB box. But just out of the box, this amplifier just has two independent sounds that you can choose to use independently. The other stark difference with the Vibrolux is the fact that rather than using a 12-inch speaker, this amplifier has two 10-inch speakers, and they're the same 1030 Celestion speakers that are used in the 68 Princeton. So it's almost like a double Princeton in the fact that you get that real snappy, crystalline kind of 10-inch speaker sound, just doubled up in the Vibrolux. Okay, so a couple of things I just want to point out about this entire range, and hopefully you're going to hear exemplified in the clips that I've made for this video, is that whether you're using an overdrive pedal or not, when you crank these amps up, they're so dynamic. As soon as you turn the volume down on your guitar, you're going to get a crystalline kind of sparkly clean tone, and then when you crank it or you crank the amp up by itself, you get a really nice smooth overdriven tone as well. And I think that's kind of courtesy of the enhancements that have been made in this custom lineup. The 65s, in my opinion, still sound really sweet when you're using them clean, but these 68s just have the edge if you want to use it for an overdriven tone, thanks to the Celestion speakers, the reduced negative feedback, and the slight voicing changes. You can use these in an overdriven context in a little bit more of a musical way, in my opinion. to find out any more information about these amplifiers, or indeed any of the other Fender products that we stock, head to peachguitars.com by clicking the link in the description box below. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.